Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Benton. It is vampirism, and there's a host of damned souls of Pelopous.
Thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Irene and Andy, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And with me today, I'm afraid Mark is still not available, so which is lucky for me. So my co-host tonight, once again, is Andy Mercer.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, Andy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's good. It should be an interesting evening, so I'm happy to be here with you again, covering for good old Mark, who's such a workaholic. Your poor guy can't get time off, so I have to step into the breach, as it were. But it's good fun.
Yeah, it's workaholic, all right. He can't get the time off, but it's like a blasted holiday to me, you know? Not having him breathing down my neck.
I'm sure he appreciates that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is our first show back since when was it?
Ooh,
since sometime before Christmas.
Yeah, we've had a few weeks off, haven't we? Because of obviously our show's recordings and broadcast falls at Christmas and then a New Year, so of course we couldn't really do much.
Yeah.
Then. So we've had to have a couple of weeks off, and here we are back again.
That's right, and we were all getting merry and pickled at Christmas, so you know we couldn't have done a show if we wanted to.
Indeed.
Right, okay, now tonight's show, right, this is going to be very, very interesting, people, and you're going to have to bear with me because I am not 100% up on this particular event. I'm not into UFOs, although we do a lot of shows on UFOs. I am not actually myself into UFOs. I prefer spooks. But tonight what we're doing is we are going to do a show or first in a series of shows, let me put it this way, on Rendlesham, on the Rendlesham Forest Incident. And my guest with me tonight, and by the way, we're coming from America, which is good, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not literally, we're not in America.
Oh, shut up, Andy. I wanted to make out I was.
I spoiled it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have spoiled it. I was going to tease the family. Anyway, my guests tonight are from one of the shows that it actually plays out on our network. It's Mark Maloney's Military X-Files. And we have with us today Mark Maloney, one of the great hosts of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And Mac is an author. He's got over 40 books. He served as a consultant for a research firm working in the US intelligence agencies, and he's a member of a rock band, Sky Club, and I can tell you they are good. They are bloody good.
Blimey.
Yeah, and Juan.
Hello.
Hello, Juan. Hello.
Hold on a second.
Oh,
I should say hello before you say hello.
That's
Don't
true.
you think so?
You were just speechless. That was just laid upon you.
Now, boys, now.
Author, rock band,
right.
media star.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to introduce you now, Juan.
Thank you for moving the show along.
Okay. Well, Juan is a bit secretive because most of his military past is undisclosed, and I haven't yet been able to get my hands on it.
That's because my military stuff has been mostly underwater.
Ah, yes, you've worked in the anti-submarine warfare and served at Guantanamo Bay. I can never say that word. Guantanamo.
Guantanamo.
Yeah,
That's the place.
Guatemala.
Not as a prisoner. Not as a prisoner. He served that.
Well, anyway, this place is in Cuba. Okay. There's also something about domestic spying programs with you, but we won't go there. Not okay.
That's my side gig. I don't think anyone had.
All right, now we've got.
Back.
Yeah. Now we've got somebody else that's just as interesting as you two. Just as interesting, and he's been with you for a number of years now, I believe, on the Mark Maloney Military X-Files. I'll say it again, everybody. The Mark Maloney Military X-Files can be heard on the Paranormal UK radio network. And that's Steve Ward. And Steve is a very knowledgeable authority on classic UFO cases. So he's going to come in very, very handy here, aren't you, Steve?
Well, I hope so. Although I will confess that Rendlesham may not be the one I know the most about, so I will be coasting occasionally and allowing other people to fill in.
Oh, God, Steve, we were all depending on you.
Oh, man, see.
Come on, Steve.
Well, see, Mac discovered me. I was living in a storm drain in Sausalito, and he made me what I am today.
Well,
So
he was there with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, right? Didn't you know him?
You made him a star.
I also spent some time underwater. I was in the Navy, but I was inspired as a young man by if you know, the classic swamp gas fiasco in Michigan, where Dr. J. Allen Hynek, they've got that show starting. I don't know if it's going to be airing in the UK or not. Project Blue Book, where they're kind of retelling very fancifully what happened back then, but kind of making Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was a very kind soul, more of an action hero. But anyway.
Hey, Steve, what are you on their payroll? All of a sudden he launches into the promotion.
Well, see, the way it is, there's a certain pecking order here. If I don't get something in now, you won't hear from me again. So, but anyway, I'm fascinated by a lot of different UFO cases.
That's really good, Steve. And you're going to have to talk to me at some point about that, because I am interested in that.
I just got to say that Steve lives in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is, I don't know if you know, but that's where they make all the great American cereals like Corn Flakes, Frosted Flakes, Cheerios, Shredder Wheat, right, Stevie?
Absolutely.
Oh, cereals.
Yeah.
If you ever watched cartoons as a kid, if you ever had imports from America, they were all sponsored by Kellogg's and Post and that sort of.
General Mills.
Yeah, I cannot understand. Do you know what? One of the biggest mysteries of these cereals now, especially Kellogg's cornflakes, why don't they put the little toy in the middle anymore in the packet?
Costs too much money.
Yeah.
I would say.
Do you remember that years and years ago? You used to rip the packet apart, cornflakes everywhere, just to get the little thing inside.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought that was Cracker Jacks.
No, they used to do them. I remember you'd get them in Frosted Flakes, Steve's favorite cereal. Yeah, they'd be like little Tony the Tiger toys.
Yeah, and Sugar Puffs.
Well, a lot of that too. But sometimes put in.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I bet
I'm
someone
sure
did sword on once.
There's a health risk if you put stuff in, because kids will swallow it.
Bound to have done that, haven't they? Probably sued them for millions.
Now, if Willy Wonka was running that enterprise, we wouldn't have that situation.
If Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka was running it, we'd be all. We wouldn't care.
Well, anyway, I still think.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I think they've gone a bit crazy with this health business. They put other stuff in there that's not good for you. So a little toy in there in a plastic bag, that's not going to harm your cornflakes, for frig's sake.
And then the plastic bag says, don't swallow the toy. And then the plastic bag says, this is not a toy.
This is not a toy.
So you get a little confused.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, dear. But I bet you some of those toys now that were in these cereal packets are worth something.
Yes. Yeah, you bet. Especially if you didn't open up the little pack. If it's still in the pack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was I thinking back then?
Yeah. What was my mother thinking? She threw out all my baseball cards.
Exactly.
I tell you one thing. This is showing that we're all about the same age group.
Okay, Juan is 29.
I'm 21.
Steve is 20. Oh, wow. You're 20.
But my sons and people of that age can think, what the hell are they talking about? Toys in cereal packets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But people, it did happen. It really did happen. We used to get the toys in the cereal packets.
That's right.
Okay.
They give you presents when you filled up with gas, not to really go down this road a long way, but they'd give you like a set of 6 glasses if you went down.
And they used to pump it for you. You didn't have to do it yourself.
Wash your window, look at your oil.
That's right. Check your tires. I know. I worked in a gas station for a little while.
Do you remember S&H stamps, S&H green stamps when you went to the grocery?
We had, what were the ones we had? The co-op green stamps. You collected the green stamps and you went along with all your hundreds of thousands of stamps and you could buy a toaster or whatever you wanted.
That's really significant.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a little story. When I worked in this petrol station for a while, right, we used to give out these green stamps. So I nicked a roll. I took it home. My mother had a field day. She had a field day. She was buying loads of stuff with these stamps.
Yeah, oh yeah. We used to, I went to Catholic school, and the nuns would tell us, bring in the green stamps for them, and they would fill up, hundreds of books of, I don't know, yet like 1,000 stamps in them. They had lots of them. You'd see them tooling around in a new car. For the missions, for the orphans.
So, talking about age, I'm old enough to remember the Beatles coming to America. I was in high school.
Yeah.
So, there's my age right there.
Okay. We're already skewing Stone Age here. So, okay. Okay,
here we go.
I had a ticket to go and see them live at Wimbledon. My dad wouldn't let me go.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Took the ticket off of me. Got wasted.
Terrible.
He said, you're not going there screaming your lungs out.
Wow.
Instead, you had to buy a ticket to Frank Ifield down the street.
Do you remember him?
I remember him.
Oh, my God, we are old.
It was a hit in the United States.
Yeah, on VJ Records, too.
Oh, was it really?
Yep. It was right up there with Please Please Me.
And let's not forget Gary Glitter.
Gary, we don't talk about Gary.
No. Leave that name out.
Yeah.
I saw him on Top of the Pops back in 1973 when I was visiting some relatives.
Well, he was Top of the Pops in a jail in Thailand for a while, I think, right?
I don't know.
They took his glitter away from him, I'm going to tell you. They really did take his glitter away. Anyway, so shall we get on with this then? Where do we start? Come on, people, where do we start? Rendlesham Forest, it was a UFA case, wasn't it? And
I can give a thumbnail of it if you want.
I think that would be a good way to start, actually. Someone give us a little summary of what is generally known about it.
In the early 80s, there's these 2 bases in England, U.S. bases, Rendlesham and Bentwaters. Steve, you jump in and correct me if I goof up, okay?
Okay, I'll do what I can here. I also have an interesting, when we get to it, kind of a side angle on the whole thing.
There's a lot of side angles on this story. That's what's strange about it. But like there were these. It was Christmas time. A lot of the troops were away. Now, one of the side angles is that they had nuclear weapons at these 2 bases, and they weren't supposed to have nuclear weapons, in the UK. But that's neither here nor there for the story. But anyway, so it was around Christmas time, and the guys who had to stay behind, some of them were at this kind of a security gate, and they saw in the woods, Rendlesham Forest, what they at first thought was a Christmas tree because it had kind of multicolored lights, right? And that was their first thought. And then it grew brighter and brighter, and they were convinced that an airplane had crashed into the woods there. So a few of them went out, and they saw these strange lights in the woods that they couldn't explain and really kind of freaked them out. So they reported back to the higher-ups, let's say, and the higher-ups just, who knows what they did with it. Then a day went by, and then the following day, they saw the same thing again. And at that point, one of the officers at Rendlesham his name was Halt, Colonel Halt. I think he was a major at the time, but who knows. He went to the commander of the base and said, hey, listen, they're seeing strange lights out in the woods again. And the commander said to him, you go out with them and find out what's going on, right? So he does. And he brings with him a tape recorder, okay? Now, he has said that, he says, I was the guy at the base who was supposed to debunk these things, okay? And this is what happened to him. He went out there, and he's with a couple of guys.
So he's the resident skeptic, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever he sees, you know, and and you can hear his experience on the tape recorder. He says, we're looking at this huge eye. It's in the middle of the forest. It looks like a big eye blinking at us. There's another light over here. There's another light over here. And you can hear it in his voice. And they have a star scope, which is like early night vision, and they're looking at it and they're freaking out, and it's recorded, and you can hear it on the internet, right? And it's the most real kind of UFO or strange paranormal witness thing you've ever heard, because it's him talking. You can hear the emotion in his voice and so on and so forth. And then, the government, just denied it all. It kind of went away. It turns out that not far from the base, there was an NSA listening post. There was a lot of kind of spooky things around there. And that was the story. But many books have been written about it, lectures and so on and so forth of, figuring out just what happened. But it's just the fact, to me, it's just the fact that you hear a guy's tape recorded voice as he's seeing these really weird things in the woods. It's just very compelling.
Yeah, I think Nick Pope has written the definitive book on this, and he does have some of the transcripts in there, like you were talking about, Mac, of what they were witnessing. I think two of the principals who also contributed to this book was Jim Peniston and John Burroughs. Jim actually went up there and touched the object. And he could actually feel it was completely quiet. He could feel like some kind of energy or vibration. They saw strange lettering or markings, around it that they said looked something like, hieroglyphics or just something undecipherable. And as I recall, their memories of exactly what happened aren't perfect, and they even lost a little bit of time, about 45 minutes, where they had kind of a lapse. Now, this is a kind of a small craft. It's basically triangular, but it kind of peaked up on the top a little bit like a pyramid. And it seems to me that there's been a huge controversy. There's some said, okay, well, this is obviously there were several witnesses. This was not a hoax, but it took off. It very slowly raised up off the ground and then took off like a shot. Very unconventional type of craft. Right. But of course, the big controversy was it some kind of super high tech black ops device, or was it extraterrestrial? Right. And that rages to this day.
And they were following it, if you can imagine it, and they're following it through the woods. It's just ahead of them, and it just kind of.
And there's pictures of this too, right?
Right, they're drawings.
They're drawings.
Because it was at night.
Okay.
But I'll tell you where the best place is to go and read up on this. It's www.ianridpath.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's got all the statements on there that were made and everything. It's absolutely a really good website.
There was a lot of UFO activity over the base in the days following this. Yeah. But the fact that this, as I said, they're kind of playing hide and seek with this thing in a very heavily forested area, and then when they finally saw it, got close to it, and as one of the guys says, he touched it and so on, had letters on it and everything, and then all of a sudden, it's gone, and it's like, well, this is the early 80s now. I don't think you could do that today, frankly, to match the description of what these people saw, right. So, but like I say, it was just an interesting place with these two bases there, with nuclear weapons that shouldn't have been there. This is the early 80s, the Reagan years, and there's a whole lot of that Euro doom stuff going on. And then they say listening station, right nearby. So something like that was going to happen in a place like, it would happen in a place like that. It would seem someone looking in. I mean, what else are they doing? They're looking in on us.
Okay, now can I throw a wrench in all this?
Yes, please.
Or maybe I should say a spanner. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
this is meant for American.
There is a book. We're trying to be universal here.
It's got to be metric then.
Best one of the new year there, Juan. Thank you.
Now, I don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't know what happened there, but this is very interesting. There's a book called Remote Viewing UFOs and the Visitors by, and I'm going to murder this guy's name, unfortunately, Tunde Tundras, something like that. And I apologize right now for destroying it. He set up some, now you guys are probably familiar with the remote viewing that was done by the U.S. military. There were several military remote viewers. This was set up by Ingo Swann, the great psychic, many years ago. And you probably are familiar with the name Joe McMoneagle, who is absolutely one of the best. His record is phenomenal. Well, this gentleman, Tunde, and he actually tasked Joe McMoneagle several times out of his own pocket, because Joe doesn't do this, he does this for a living. And Joe did this Rendlesham Forest as a double-blind target. He had no idea what this was and didn't get feedback from it. Yeah. And it's fascinating, because this guy goes through the...
a double-blind target, by the way, means that the actual... the remote viewer doesn't know anything about the target, neither does the monitor.
Nothing.
Right, exactly. So he gets the envelope, and it's in there. There's several questions like, describe the area, describe what's going on and so forth, and describe the I don't know if he actually used the term energy or whatever. At any rate, he McMoneagle gets the idea. I mean, he describes the general area of Rendlesham, the forest, and the rolling hills surrounding it, and so forth. And then his drawing is remarkably close to what they saw at Rendlesham. Kind of triangular. He got the pyramidal shape on top. And he got the impression, he talked about it having 3 opaque reflective sides, about 6 foot by 4 foot. It was vibrating at a low frequency, and he talked about that's some kind of radiation mark. In fact, when they checked the radiation afterwards, the radiation was in a perfect equilateral triangle underneath where the object rested. So. Now, here's the thing. It was asked about what was the origin of this situation. Joe McMoneagle's impression was that it was terrestrial. It was a flight test involving re-entry from some kind of another overhead craft. Okay. And he said that the impression was that something went wrong, something went badly, but it was that the general idea was to deploy this and to check the reactions of those people around there. Now, that's phenomenal. If that's true, this is back in the 80s.
Early 80s.
Early
80s.
The way I look at it, right, is that a lot of this is out there. It's particularly on that website I was telling you. A lot of this about the energy, this, that, and the other, that he reported is out there. But if he was working double blind, and I know as a remote viewer that if you're not told what your target is, and he comes up with something like this, then that is remarkable.
Right. Can I just...
he couldn't have read it previously because he didn't know what it was going to be.
No, right. Not at all.
Back then, starting in the, I don't want to be the bucket of cold water here, but just one possible explanation is back then what they used to have these satellites, spy satellites, and Juan will know about this. I'm sure Al Martini will too. They used to literally eject the film from orbit. And would come down, and they would have a C-130 Hercules with a hook in the front of it. Yep.
Yeah,
actually picked them up in mid-flight. Okay, and that's how they would recover. It was literally film. I believe.
That's how recovered sonar buoys that way
from
too.
Stuff like that. Okay, so now it's all video. Who knows what the hell it is now? But I'm wondering if that explanation has something to do with something like that. But certainly, if they didn't catch it, the thing is just going to crash to the ground. It's not going to float around. It's not going to play hide and seek with these guys in the forest. And it's certainly not going to take off, in the blink of an eye. That's why it just sounds like whatever they saw was something. Not only was it not 1980s technology, but I don't think it was earthly technology, to tell you the truth. If it was, They were doing stuff back in the 80s that, would still amaze us today.
And it might shed light on, there are many of these triangle sightings in the 80s and 90s over upstate New York, over a busy freeway, people stopping to see these things. Perhaps, in some cases, they aren't ET. Perhaps they are just some way-out technology that we have no idea. But the conclusion that McMonagle came up with was that the primary mission of this device was to test, launch, and commit evasive flight and recovery operations under cover of darkness, and then to check to see what the response was. Mm-hmm. So, but some of it, at one point they said, they had a lot of sightings afterwards that at one point this light in the sky seemed to separate in 4 different sections. I don't know what kind of, if it's some kind of a illusion or sleight of hand, but another thing, Mac, that I'm sure you know about, is that there were some illnesses. The men, especially the 2 men that initially were in close contact with this object.
Jim Penniston got ill, didn't he?
Yes.
Because all his records disappeared.
Yes.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stories, around it. Peter Robbins, who's a friend of the show, is someone who has spent a lot of time and effort and anxiety. I'm sure he would tell you over, writing a book. I think it was called "Take a Left at,"
Eastgate.
Eastgate. And he really documented it. But the thing is,
but the point is that book was withdrawn, wasn't it?
There's
by the publisher.
Stories, right. And it's just like Roswell. All of a sudden, you have this odd story. Let's say I think Rendlesham is odder than Roswell, but you have it, and then all of a sudden people keep piling on, and there's books about.
Well, that's it. They all want to jump on the bandwagon, But Peter Robinson, it wasn't his fault.
Oh no.
The book was withdrawn. It was nothing to do with Peter Robinson. Right. He was the innocent party in that.
Right. Yeah,
and we love you, Peter. We love you,
brother Peter. Yep, you bet. But see, in my opinion, just some officer in the U.S. Air Force at a secret base, a base that's not supposed to be there, on a tape recording, seeing something in the forest, playing hide and seek. That to me, that's amazing enough. I don't need an underground alien base underneath the place.
But also on that particular night, one of those particular nights, there was a Russian rocket re-entering the Earth's orbit, Earth's atmosphere.
I got to say this is that there's always a Russian, right? There's always something re-entering, Do you know what
I can't get, right? Really, what I can't get around my head sometimes is there was all these things like Russian rockets and everything re-entering the atmosphere and everything, and there's us walking around with mobile phones the size of bricks. Excuse the language, everybody, but this is the truth. Could have got that in my handbag.
Wowee. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's been a story around, lately that the Russians now have this like hypersonic missile that nothing can touch. If you go back,
that's a beauty.
But if you go back 2 years, they were saying they had a bomber that no one can touch, and they have a submarine that no one can. They throw these things out there when we have.
Have you seen that machine on the front of that ship?
No. What is that?
Well, what you're talking about, there's a machine, there's like a gun, like the old-fashioned gun what sits with the turret thing, with the barrel that goes out. Well, apparently the barrel
like a real
it's too wide for something or other, and it won't work.
Well, it's just like the reality of the Russian military is this: is 2 years ago when they were fighting, whoever in Syria, they brought their one and only aircraft carrier down from Murmansk into the Mediterranean and off the coast of Lebanon, let's say off the coast of Syria.
What a rust bucket that was.
They had rowboats with it.
It was a rust bucket, wasn't it?
4 planes going right off the deck, and then they just packed up and went away. You know, the United States, between the United States, Britain, and Italy, like about 35 aircraft carriers that are out there operating every day, day after day. You know,
that darling was to say. That darling was to say, look at their boat. We got a boat too.
Right, exactly. You know, it's for internal consumption. A lot of it is for internal consumption. You know, so. But anyway.
You've mentioned now, of course, that's one day, or night, you should say, of events. Of course, it happened over more than one night, according to other people involved. So we actually
three dates, weren't there?
Yes.
3 dates involved.
Oh, 3 dates, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the 25th to the 26th, early hours of the 25th, started on the 25th, went into the 26th, and then it was the 27th, 28th.
See, it's an odd time, but it seems like a time to, if you wanted to be up to no good, you know, it's over a Christmas week, week. A lot of people.
It's over Christmas night. You know, you kiss this parrot and that's it, mate. I'll be seeing anything out there.
Well, I'd be concerned if the base staff that were drunk with nuclear weapons around as well.
Well, there was talk that there were drugs and things on the base. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
That makes us feel a whole lot better.
Exactly. It's really cheerful thought, isn't it?
Shall I tell you what I can't? And I spoke to Mark about this today, and I asked him whether this was possible. Right, now we went decimal in 1971 over here. Okay, but the metric system of length, our measurement and everything, didn't come until more somewhere between 1971 and 1980. I think it was about 1976 people started using it, and everyone was complaining. So in 1980, the government turned around and said, okay, you can't get the hang of this. We'll keep the imperial measure as well as the metric measure.
Yes.
Right, so anybody now born after 1980 was actually educated in the metric, whereas us oldies was still using both. I still use the pounds and ounces and things like that. But in these statements that were done in 1980 by these people, Fred Burren, who wrote his statement out, he used the words yards, right? 100 yards was in his statement. John Burroughs used 2 miles, right? Okay. Edward Cabass, I can't pronounce that name. He talked in meters.
Okay.
And Chandler, he talked in meters. Penderson talked in meters and miles. And Colonel Holt, well, he talks in feet.
Right. It's confusing.
But it was difficult for people here living in the UK to get their heads around this. And like I said to Mark today, were you educated in metric system, kilometres and things like that over there? No, you're still using the old feet and inches, aren't you, and miles?
Yes, over here, definitely. They tried to do the same thing, and it just didn't catch on over here. So
we had metric road signs for a while, and they tore them down.
Yep, they tore them down.
Was that in 1980?
It was in the late 70s, mid 70s or so. I'll tell you a real quick story because I did when I got out of film school, as Juan keeps getting.
Film school.
My final project.
Juan, I like that Juan.
Join the club. I did a film with Bill Lee, the pitcher for the Red Sox, on the metric system where he, threw a ball a certain amount. Here it is in feet, here it is in metrics and stuff. And they had the metric measurement at Fenway Park where the Boston Red Sox play baseball for years on the wall, and I finally did take them off, And then, the day we finished it was the day the story came out and said the government says the hell with it, we're not going to go with metrics. Thank you. So
what got me was young soldiers of 19, 20, 25 years old being able to put stuff into metric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just too confusing. It just didn't, like soccer is never going to be big over here in the United States. I'm sorry, because some things just don't sink in with Americans for some reason.
True.
Very true. Well, that's a shame, though, because it's a good sport. So, who wants to give us a kind of summary of what is supposed to have happened on the third night? I know, obviously, it's controversial, but I think we need to cover it as well.
That's the third night was when Colonel Holt was at dinner, wasn't he, or something, in the mess, and somebody come running in yelling, it's back, and he went out there.
Right.
And also on that tape, another thing, if I'm a mother, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if I thought there was UFOs out there and I had just children, I wouldn't be taking my kid out there with me.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, somewhere on this tape, there's piano music, which turns out to have been his daughter. Maybe she had a Walkman or something, I don't know what she had, or a little radio or something with her at the time, and switched it on, and it got caught on the tape. But this is on a military base. This is a UFO sighting or some unidentified sighting out there that nobody knows what's going on out there, and you take a child out.
That's a little crazy, man. Yeah, you'd be in jail if that happened over here.
Well, that's if it's true. But like I said, it was on that website. I read it on that website that I've been reading.
I've never heard that he brought his kid out there. That's
fenced around this base or something. What's the security?
they were outside the perimeter.
Okay.
Yeah, they're outside the perimeter, and it's in I guess it's in East Anglia, which I'm not really.
No, Suffolk.
And it's like
East Anglia. Yeah, it's the same area.
It's an area where they've had lots of long history for centuries of strange things happening there. Even now they say that the trees won't grow in the spot where this thing touched down. Didn't they find some kind of stuff on the ground there too? Didn't they find some kind of?
As I understand, it was they actually checked for radiation, and it followed the perfect pattern of an equilateral triangle. I don't know about any other kind of residue.
Yeah, they found 3 imprints in a triangle shape or something or other, about 7.5 feet in diameter or whatever. But
it sounds like
the Forestry Commission says it looked like they actually look like rabbit scratchings.
Oh, well, what else are they going to say? Doesn't it sound like something from Doctor Who, the early Doctor Who? How they used to have like the crazy machines.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way they said it looked like a pyramid. There's some kind of pyramids in Doctor Who, and it just the way it acted and so on. But then when it takes off in a flash, and one of the things everyone there kind of agrees on is that this thing left in a
blink of an eye,
gone.
Yeah,
that's not technology we have today. Maybe we have it, but they certainly didn't have it back in the 80s.
So with tape rolling. At the time, there was no sound of this object.
Just gone.
There's always just
no. The taping was after it had gone, wasn't it?
No,
and they were examining the ground.
Right.
With a guide, the Geiger counter that they couldn't work properly.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the stuff
that was not.
They have glow sticks.
Designed for that type of work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff, didn't work, as it seems to happen a lot, like out in the field in the military. But once again, just to go back to this, if something odd was going to happen, this is the place it's going to happen, because you're at these 2 bases that shouldn't be there with weapons that shouldn't be there. Not a lot of people around. At the Christmas season, they're having a party at the base. It just seems like an odd time to... I don't know, for aliens to visit us or...
Another thing, Jim Penniston said in his statement that the closest he got to it was 50 meters. But since then on radio and things like that, he's talked about being within 10 foot of this thing, about the feeling of static electricity coming off of it, the feeling that time was not flowing properly, it was dragging, and everything was in slow motion. When he put his hand on it and everything, because he felt round it, but he couldn't find any doors, no windows, no nothing like that. And until he came across these icon things, and that's when he was, he says that, and also there is something else as well, you see, the black, I can't get my mouth around the words today, binary code that he put into his notebook, that didn't come out for a couple of years.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but, once again, don't want to be the bucket of cold water. But, this is, again, one of these stories that has just so many elaborations on top of it. A lot of the guys, the people who are actually out there, even they disagree on what happened. And that just means that, this guy's helping this guy with a book, this guy's helping this guy with a book. And, the more you say, the better it's going to be, and so on and so forth. And it clouds the real issue that these people are out in the woods on Christmas Eve or in the Christmas, season at a base that isn't supposed to be there, seeing this thing, and you have a tape recording of the guy doing it. That's crazy enough for 99% of the people, believe me.
Definitely.
Okay, I've said my piece there. One, you want to?
Well, I saw some. I was reading something along the way here that perhaps was
while he was driving
a hoax. That's right.
It was a hoax.
It was a hoax. In fact, it was a hoax by somebody driving around in a military vehicle rigged up with these strange lights.
Really? Yeah. Well, that's even crazier. Who would do that? They should
On the
be
basis that's supposed to be there. It's like a college Christmas prank.
Thing? Yeah. Okay. Those wacky people in UK, they're always pulling pranks.
I've got a quick question for everybody here talking about this at the moment. Who's actually been there?
I've never been there. No.
I have. I have been there.
Have you? What's it like there?
Really.
Have you been there, Andy?
Yes, I have. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and what did you? Okay, what was your first impression of the place?
Well, I'd have to say the whole of Rendlesham Forest itself is absolutely strange. There's a very odd feeling about it. Now, it's not to do with UFOs at all, but the place itself is odd. I have been there. We went sort of an afternoon and then sort of had a good wander around the woods, and we were trying to find the site of the model that's been constructed, which apparently is not actually on the site of the supposed landing. It's supposed to be nearby it. We ended up completely in the wrong part of the wood for a long while, and only gradually began to realise we were in the wrong area because we weren't finding anything, and we were trying to find the East Gate. So we were quite some way from where the supposed landing took place, and it just feels strange. There's no other way of explaining it. It just feels strange. You do feel a sense of not being entirely on your own there. I mean, there's four of us, but there's more around, more going on. And we actually ran into a guy who knew the area quite well, and he told us a number of stories that were nothing to do with UFOs, but of very strange sightings over the years of things that have occurred in the wood and in the area of the wood, where people have seen strange-looking figures walking around and then suddenly disappearing, things that appear almost two-dimensional, walking across the road and just disappearing in the middle of the road, and things along those lines. So he said it was long before and since the UFO landing. He said his area of interest is more those other stories. He's asked me not to say who he is when we spoke to him at the time, because he hoped to get him on a radio show, but he didn't want to do that. But he's been cataloguing more the other events outside of the UFO stuff, and he said this place almost for centuries has had all sorts of stories of strange sightings of sort of black magic and witchcraft and all those kind of strange things going on in it, and strange creatures sighted, alien in the sense of being sort of fairy folk and that kind of thing have been seen in the wood for centuries. This is not a one-off. This is not just some random base or a random wood and this thing happened. This place, this area has had problems or mysteries for centuries, and this is just the latest in a long line of them. And just give a little side story, which I think you might find interesting. A friend of mine, my old ghost investigation team, a guy called James, he had a relative who lived in the Rendlesham area. And so back in the 1960s, they were plough farming the farm, which is actually where the other supposed landing took place, in the 1960s, and pulled up an elongated skull, human skull, but it was elongated. Now, he said, it was turned over to the local authorities and went off to the police, and basically it was never seen
disappeared
again.
From there.
Absolutely. Now, it could obviously be just a deformed human being. There's nothing more to it than that. But he said it was definitely a human. It was human looking. It was an adult size, and the skull was extended out the back. And so that was found in the 1960s in the very wood, up the very fields, I should say, where the other supposed sighting took place. So it just shows that the place itself has got a strange feeling about it. There's no doubt about it at all. And the fact that there's a nuclear base that wasn't supposed to be nuclear there, it all kind of ties into this is a strange place.
Are they still there? Base is still there? Sorry, Stretch. Are the bases still there, Andy?
They are physically present,
the base is still there. They're more like a museum, yeah.
Well, no, you can't stay in
like
the base. They're shut down, and you can't. Again,
they're shut down, but they're still there. Okay.
As far as we can see, there are private security signs, so security firm obviously takes care of the site. But I know people who have got into the site and shouldn't have, and they've been able to wander around fairly freely around some of the more sort of buildings that have become rather derelict now, but no, there's no activity there. One of the things, funny enough, I was talking about with a friend over Christmas, we were doing this show, that I reminded myself I'd forgotten. On the way from the main road towards where the supposed landing took place, which I say apparently is not quite where it actually took place, but where they've erected the monument, this black triangular thing, we came across what I can only describe as a kind of hole in the ground, a vented hole in the ground, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a manhole.
Like
in the middle of the
what
wood.
You mean, like there's an underground...
An underground something, certainly. In the middle of the wood, there's a large manhole. Now, again, what we've heard subsequent is, of course, about these nuclear weapons were there and stored underground under the base, and there may be pathways or tunnels that extended out from the base. Probably not going very far, but there's no doubt about it. That was a manhole in the middle of a wood. That was the strangest thing to find.
Which is not something you very often see, is it? Let's face it. No. But the woods, you're talking about the woods, a lot of woods around the UK. You've got Nottingham Forest, you've got Ashdown Forest. They give you that eerie feeling when you're in them.
No, I've been to many woods on ghost investigations.
So many strange things happen in them.
Yeah, no, I've been on many ghost investigations over the years to various outside locations, woods and forests, and I'm honestly say to you, nowhere has felt like Rendlesham. That one had more of that atmosphere, a feeling to it than anywhere else I've been to.
Yeah.
People who aren't even in the UFO field aren't there because of UFOs. They say it creeps them out when they go in there. They probably don't even know the story.
Well, it's a tourist attraction now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a large car park there, and so you've got this. There's the UFO trail you can follow, as well as sort of forestry trails. But we were there sort of late afternoon into early evening. It was probably didn't come out for a year ago, so it wasn't the height of summer or anything like that. It wasn't like great. Well, the weather was okay, but it wasn't there for good weather, and there weren't many people about. But say the chap we actually met in the car park had arranged to meet somebody else there, and that person hadn't turned up. So it was just our luck, thankfully, that he was there and able to talk to us about what he's been cataloguing. As I say, well, I've tried to certainly come on the radio. He wasn't too keen on the idea at the moment, was to keep a low profile because of all the other problems this site has generated. But as I said, his main interest was always the other stuff, not just the UFO thing, and that was a sideline for him. It was because he started off looking at the UFO case, of course, but then was told his other stories. As I say, he's a local, and all sorts of strange things were coming out that people have seen and experienced over the years.
There's a story in, I have to say, one of my books on sale everywhere called UFOs in Wartime, where in 1958, when there it is, Juan Hang, holding it up. Well, we're a radio show. There is
I can see that.
Appreciated that, Juan. What happened was there were a couple U.S. fighters, F-86 fighters, 1958, on call, on standby. They'd have them out, warmed up on the runway just in case, because the whole Russian thing and so on. And they get scrambled, and one of them had to turn back. So it's one guy in an F-86, and he is flying, and he can see 1,000 blips on a radar screen coming towards him. Mm-hmm. And they're vectoring him toward it. He's going, wow, what is going on here, And they went by him overhead, and then just disappeared. And, he doesn't have a recording of it, but, it has like the text of, the back and forth and everything was transcribed. And if you do like the measurements and stuff, it happened almost like right over these two bases.
Wow. There was no shots of the radar display.
No. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Yep. I mean, they have a lot of people who are in the control tower saying, this looks like a Russian invasion. You can see it comes 1,000 blips at us, and he's up there and they're going around him, but they're not planes, and then they kind of suddenly disappear, but once again, it's over East Anglia, and if you kind of do the look, it's right over these two bases. That happened in 1958. So, as Andy says, it's a place where all these weird things have been happening all along. Now they just happen to involve high technology and stuff because that's what we live in. But hundreds of years ago, people still see strange stuff there now.
Well, Colonel Holt calls into the radar towers in East Anglia to see if they picked anything up. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
At those particular times, nothing. No,
Right.
weren't picking nothing up at all.
See, that whole area is interesting because that's my main area of interest are these so-called high strangeness areas where all these different types of phenomena seem to come together and it's not clear what the connection is. And, of course, there's Nick Redfern has written about Cannock Chase. I'm connected to the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in the Ohio Valley, all the strange stuff that went on there. You've heard of the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, all over the globe, there are these areas like you just referenced where you've got cryptids, poltergeist phenomena, classic haunting stuff, UFOs, and sometimes it's very ethereal or very nebulous. Doesn't seem to be a very solid kind of a proposition. So, and we talk a lot about that on Mac's show.
Yeah. It's interesting. It really is interesting. There's, what is it?
If you want to see something that's not solid, follow us after the show.
Is that clean or dirty, what you just said?
No.
It's ethereal, all right.
That's just Irene's mind, I'm afraid. So
I picked up on the word solid.
Who can give us a little bit of a rundown of night 3? I mean, we got as far as being told that it's back, and then what happened after that? I mean, according to those who have spoken about it, so sort of give us a run through.
I've never heard of night 3. I've heard of the first night and the night that Colonel Holt went out there. That's the only nights I've heard of. Unless could you check in my book, maybe I have been wrong.
And that might be in the part of Nick Pope's book I haven't read yet. So,
have you ever heard third night there, Switchy?
I don't know. I have any information.
It started on the late evening of the 25th, didn't it? So that sighting was from the 25th into the 26th, and the next sighting was from, I got it wrong, I think, was from the 27th into the 28th.
That I've heard of when they were having the Christmas party at the base.
Yeah.
That was on the 27th into the 28th.
Yeah. So really, it took place over a period of 4 days, but a certain amount. Hang on a second. All right, carry on talking.
Carry on talking, 1-1, please. Do a tap dance for us quickly.
Well, I was thinking it might be time for me to go into the room.
The room?
And then be back in a couple of minutes. Can we do that?
The room? Oh, you mean the break room?
Yeah.
Do we have breaks, kids?
No.
Sorry.
We can do.
He means the little boys' room, I think.
Yes.
You're excused, 1-1, and just
The loo.
Where's he going, the loo? A pity he hasn't got a microphone. We could hear the tinkling.
No.
Well,
okay, I will take leave.
Once again.
Oh, dear me. Anyway, where were we? Because I got lost there. I've forgotten where we were now.
We all did. It's one of the best stories, one of my favorite UFO stories, because, once again, obviously something happened, and I'll say it one more time, and I promise I'll stop. It happened at a very strange place, at a very strange time, in a place where it not only have these nuclear weapons that aren't supposed to be there, there's an NSA listening site right near this place.
That's right, yeah.
And it's like, well, what's that doing there, And all of a sudden,
read into that then? I know you're saying that, and I fully understand what you're saying. But what do you read into that? What do you think that's the significance of those factors?
See, I don't think that. Let's say it was our technology. Okay, let's just say it was our technology. You wouldn't try out this super duper technology in this area that has all these this strange stuff going on, strange stuff as far as a base that isn't supposed to be there, weapons that aren't supposed to be there, an NSA listening station. You want to kind of keep those areas kind of quiet. You don't want to make a noise around those, You don't want to make El Martini, our producer, wants to say something. Okay, this is the first time speaking on air. Go ahead.
Why would they, in fact, if they had some kind of special technology going on, and it was an American thing, why would they take it out of the country and involve another government in it? If they were going to do it, why wouldn't they do it somewhere in this country?
In the desert or something.
Unless the technology belonged to this country.
That's entirely possible, but why would it be an American base?
No, I get what you're saying, exactly.
They would not do it anywhere near an American base, or any base comes. They wouldn't bring light to that particular base.
Unless they didn't.
They do it up in the middle of nowhere.
They may not have intended it to land. If Joe McMonagle is right in his remote viewing, something went wrong. So perhaps it was just to be a flyover or something like that to test the reaction. And if something went wrong, maybe it wasn't supposed to land or come down towards the ground.
Yeah, but then how do you account for it taking off in a flash?
Well, according to Penniston, I believe it was Penniston, it was either Penniston or Burroughs, this thing, it was on the ground, right? It came down, it was white, brilliant white, it came down and it landed on the ground, and it turned brilliant, metallic, shiny, beautiful black. And then all the time, as it just sat there, and then all of a sudden all these lights started going through it, and then it lifted up off the ground, and then up through the trees, turned white again like a bright white light and shot off up into the sky. But he thought it was well, in his mind, he couldn't see how there was no windows, no doors, how anyone could possibly be inside it. And he thought this thing was self-healing itself.
May I quote from Nick Pope's book about the third night?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This is originally John Burroughs. This is the third night this light came back. And he originally didn't have permission to go toward it. But then he and Sergeant Adrian Tinza, they were authorized to approach one of the lights. So they walked toward this thing, and then in his words, Burroughs' words, he says, all of a sudden in front of us, we had a blue transparent light come streaking toward us, and then a white object kind of appeared up and then floated down and was sitting out there in the distance. They got permission to go toward it, and as they started going toward it, then it appeared to start coming toward them. Now, the sergeant was on his right, and he went down to the ground. And he saw Burroughs go kind of into the light and saw Burroughs disappear. He saw the light kind of explode or seem to explode, and then Burroughs was gone for several minutes before he reappeared. And Burroughs says, I have no recollection of it. I have no memory of what happened. The next thing I know, I was standing in the field, and it was gone.
So I was of the opinion there was a third night that I'd heard of. So yeah, that sounds like what it was.
Well, I was just doing some Wikipedia stuff and Google things, and it seems to mention the 28th and stuff on the halt memo. Or the halt tape.
Of course, there was also a lighthouse out there. You know that, don't you?
There was what?
A lighthouse.
Has been offered as one of the possible explanations.
Oh, that's right.
Lights. It does seem to be a fact that there is an alignment between where they were standing, the direction they were looking, and where the lighthouse actually is on the coast. That's right. It does draw a line, but I mean, the chances of them, one, not recognising a bloody lighthouse where they've been based there for some period of time, and two, lighthouses don't change colour and they don't move. They might blink on and off as they turn or appear to, but they certainly don't behave the way these things were described. But it is a fact that it is an alignment.
Some of these airmen were new to the woods. They'd just come onto the base.
It seems to me the show UFO Hunters went there and they debunked the lighthouse thing. By the way, I quoted from Encounter in Rendlesham Forest by Nick Pope. Just throw on the record there.
Yeah.
There you go, Nick. There's a nice little plug for you.
So Nick thinks it really happened, right, Steve?
I haven't gotten to his conclusion, but I think he does. Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, it was a real event, and it was like remember Socorro, New Mexico? Lonnie Zamora saw this craft land and 2 humanoids next to it, and he's a real credible guy. Then years later, they come out and say, "Oh, it was a college prank." Well, that's as ridiculous as it is as Rendlesham to say that this was some kind of hoax. Whatever it was not a hoax.
It was certainly something. I mean,
there was something going on, and also there was, oh Christ, what's those things? I've forgotten the bloody word now. Oh, they fly around up in the sky.
Are you talking?
Oh, what are they? When they break up these big rock things that fly around.
Meteorite?
Meteors. Yeah, there was meteors. Meteorite. Ooh. There was plenty of them flying around that night as well.
The other thing that's come out very, very recently, which you may not have caught up in America just yet, was this supposed claim that it was actually an SAS prank that was carried out onto the American-based people, which does seem utterly ridiculous when you look at the actual report that the SAS officers are unnamed, surprise, surprise, and the supposed source of the story is a little hard to track down, so it seems highly unlikely that there's any truth to it whatsoever. But it has literally come out the last few days, this supposed SAS prank carried out against the Americans on the base, which I shouldn't really mention, but it does seem to be a rather crazy idea to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's
paper and
BS, actually. Somebody else trying to jump on the bandwagon there.
Yeah, somewhat less than reputable newspaper, if you like. It's probably not far off an English version of the
That's reputable?
Well, it did spread through quite a few. The Daily Mail put it out. It spread through quite a few, but they were all rags.
That's their homepage.
They're rags. And, I think the SAS has got a lot better things to do with their time than play pranks on young airmen.
I see no real possibility of that
at a nuclear base,
right?
Yeah.
As well.
Sure. In the career, I don't think so.
No. Has it ever actually been officially confirmed that it did have nuclear weaponry there? Because it's been obviously an open secret for a long time. But has the American government actually said yes, it was officially?
It was it wasn't the big stuff. It wasn't the big stuff. It was more lighter nuclear weapons sort of stuff.
The sort of hand pocket variety stuff.
I'm standing here, throwing my hands around, like an Italian. But
but have they actually officially ever confirmed this is the case?
I've never been good at explaining.
As I'm asking our American colleagues here, have they ever officially confirmed that it was a nuclear base?
Well, no, I haven't heard any, but obviously, it's come from somewhere, hasn't it? Because they were all up at Greenham Common.
I mean, the story's been about for decades, but has it ever been officially confirmed, is what I'm saying?
No, I don't know. I honestly don't know. All I know is that everybody thought it was all up at Greenham Common, that there was nuclear stuff up there, and you had the women up there with their ban the bomb signs and what have you, camping out, having a great time. But that's where they thought everybody thought it was, but it wasn't, apparently it was down there.
Okay. Not.
Crazy. Oh, God.
Do you know anything about the Sizewell nuclear power station? Does that ring a bell? Okay, there was a rumor, Pope says there was a rumor that there was a radiation leak that had something to do with some of this, which was just a rumor and it still wouldn't explain what was going on. More than once on American military bases, qualified, credible military people have seen strange objects come over, and sometimes they've lasted there for several minutes. And then, everybody goes crazy. They scramble jets. And then when it's over, they say, by the way, this is just a test, just to test the stress level in our soldiers. And by the way, don't say anything about it. And sometimes people are then sent away to other bases where they can't talk to each other. So that's kind of a standard operating procedure to say, by the way, we really don't know what the hell happened, but we're going to say it's just some kind of a test.
Yeah.
And nobody says anything until not even on their deathbed, right? That's the part that cracks me up. All these people sworn to secrecy, all these individuals, and
Well, that's true because sometimes people finally, when they're like 40 years later, they're interviewed and they think, well, it's okay now. I can talk about what happened. But they kept it because of they were threatened and the level of secrecy and so forth. They didn't say anything about it for decades. And a lot of times they didn't even tell their own families.
it's amazing. It's amazing the sworn secrecy. I don't get it.
Oh, well, when you sign the act, especially in this country, it's your head off if you open your mouth.
Because something, they'd have to have something over them. You just don't keep quiet. It's not human nature to keep that quiet about something without something really ugly hanging over
You
your head.
tell your kids or something.
You do find a way of getting stuff out, I presume. There are ways.
Connolly used to say, in the highly unlikely event of my death, read this, But no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's under the influence of some kind of euphoric substance when I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and I was talking about all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
It cracked up the surgeon, and I remember kind of being under oath and saying, when I went in the Navy, do you talk in your sleep? And I go, no. I'm not talking in my sleep. I'm talking, under the influence of Novocaine or anything, or nitrous oxide.
But that would have been a great show if you would have, had some of that stuff before we went on.
They were given truth drugs, though, as well.
They were?
Yeah. Apparently they were. They were put under a test where they were given, what is it?
Well,
my memory is terrible today.
Sodium pentothal or something?
You've heard the classic Nazis say, we've got ways to make you talk. And I tell you, my surgeon has ways to make me talk. I'll tell you that.
I know that some have gone through lie detector tests and passed.
Yeah, and hypnotism. Oh, well, that is possible to pass a lie. To pass a lie detector test. I've not had a drink or anything. I'm sitting here drinking water.
I'm sure you've been drinking all day from the sounds of it.
No, I'm drinking water, sweetheart.
Well, I just want to ask about there was a backup for a follow-on question to my whole thing about the nuclear stuff. It does seem to be there are a strong correlation between UFO sightings and nuclear bases and nuclear places, if you like.
Yeah.
What you guys think about that? I mean, are we looking at a connection here that was possibly why these things were there?
It seems to be a magnetic attraction between those two situations, bases of any sort and UFOs.
And even the high strangeness spots.
If I was a UFO, I want to be going around, the different bases. I mean, I'd be snooping around, saying, hey, what do they have that we don't have, maybe?
Mm-hmm. And even the classic high strangeness areas where all these things go on, there always seems to be some kind of a military base in close proximity. Mm-hmm. So what came first? Did the military presence create some kind of a phenomena, or do they automatically station them there when they're aware that there's these levels of high strangeness going on?
So interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, one of these days we're trying to get a alien being on the show and say, hey, look, we've been debating this for years now. What gives? What's the story? Are you guys really interested or not?
Just maybe you already have and don't know it.
Yeah, there's one here that can't talk right.
No, that's illegal aliens.
Gosh. Yeah. Well, whatever went on that night, we're all in agreement that something happened. Something happened.
I think that's the one thing you can say with a degree of certainty, that something happened, not just lighthouses or people on drugs and drunk. Something was physically in those woods, but whatever it was will remain a mystery. And one of the things that often I find interesting is, has this particular sighting or any major sightings been linked to each other? I mean, I just want to throw this idea out there. Are we always talking about different aliens from different places on all these different locations, or are they the same guys turning up time and again?
Well, or are they us from the future? Dun, 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 dun.
I think if you did a plot, like a 50,000-foot view of a plot where these instances happen, and then you draw these lines from incident location to incident location, it plots out some kind of geometric pattern and things like that, where we entertain the idea that there is a distinct relationship between these events or these geological artifacts or these hotspot radiation locations, and they're measuring they're plotting it out from point to point around the globe and say, look at this. It represents a perfect diamond shape or whatever it might be. And
so the landings aren't really just random sites, and are they? They are obviously specific.
Well, it is interesting about the way that the humanoids or the occupants or whatever look, because we talk today all the time about the grays, and how predominant they are. Well, they didn't really show up in mass until about the 1980s. If you go back to the late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the humanoid encounters were very different. It was very, very difficult to find a gray in any of that, although they did show up once in a while. You had an incredible variety.
Yeah, they were little green men as far as I was concerned.
I do remember reading somewhere, and I could be wrong on this, that the first time the aliens were described as the Greys as we now see them was Whitley Strieber's Communion book. That was the first time they were given that description, and it seems to have expanded out from that point. I could be wrong.
Yes, although you could probably find a few. The Betty and Barney Hill aliens really weren't Greys. They were something a little bit different. It's almost like if you were to draw a caricature, or if the Betty and Barney Hill aliens were to create an android, it would look something like a Gray. But yes, you're right. That's kind of when it really first came in, or at least came into the public consciousness. But if you go back to David Webb wrote a book called 1973, You're the Humanoid. You had this great wave of landings and humanoid encounters in North America, and you can't find a gray in any of those. You find remember the Pascagoula aliens, the kind of like silver androids and so forth. And a lot of little men in silver suits and so forth, but they really didn't look like Greys so much. And you even had the sort of the Nordic types, and I'm not necessarily talking about the contactees either, which got pretty fanciful. But it's interesting because some people like John Keel, the author of the Mothman Prophecies, suspected that something else might be going on, and that there might be a bit of a deception or a facade, and that the appearance of the so-called aliens, and sometimes even the craft, because they're all different too when you get down to the detail, that it might be more of a projection or deception to some degree, and we're not actually seeing what's going on.
I take a lot of story in what John Keel said. I mean, some of the stuff is downright crazy, but I do think there's something to that. I've always been of the opinion, again, personal stuff, I've always been of the opinion that these things appear as we want them to appear. They don't have a set identity themselves, but they adhere to what we want to see. I've, again, talking about stuff I've done in the past, I've written a book. This is a collection of witchcraft, magic's actual real spells from the 1800s from the UK. It was published last year. And I was going through a lot of old folklore books from the 1800s and early 1900s, looking for tales of witchcraft, obviously, but also I came across all sorts of stories of things like elves and pixies and strange creatures in the woods and that kind of thing, that to sort of Victorian eyes fitted the description of say an elf or a pixie or those kind of things, but we would probably see more of them as looking like aliens. Again, some described as being small figures, tall willowy figures, these will-o'-the-wisps kind of things seen in the woods and forests around the UK. How they were being described fitted, their mindset of how they saw these things, but they'd probably, if we were seeing them now, we'd probably go towards the idea of sort of aliens from other realities as how we'd see them. So I definitely think we are looking at things that present themselves either deliberately or because it's how our minds work differently depending on who you are and your belief system and your mindset and what you see. But as you rightly say, the vast variety of alien spacecraft that suppose you've been seeing, the different shapes and forms and sizes and colours, etc., means we're being sort of visited by thousands of different races all at the same time, more or less, or it is the same one thing that just appears differently depending on who the observer is.
Well, that's right. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, of course, we know as the author of Sherlock Holmes, was one of the original paranormal investigators. He wrote a book called The World of the Fairies. And then there he says, and he firmly believed in, the experiences that people were seeing, the fairies and the little people and so forth. But he said that the appearance of the fairies were largely dependent on the person viewing them. It sounded just like John Keel from 100 years ago.
Exactly. Definitely think so.
And you also brought up the, Jacques Vallée, of course, talked about in Passport to Magonia. You go back to, actually the fairies. If you took some of the descriptions of the fairies, took away their little red hat and put them on a silver suit on them, they would look identical to some of the UFO pilots. But they would dance around the fairy rings. And then, you get into the 1960s, you had something we called saucer nests. And now we get the crop circles, which a lot of those are, I'm sure, are done by humans. But you have this, and of course, the missing time. Missing time, we know all about those with close encounters. But the same thing happened with encounters with the fairies or the little people. Only instead of having that unscheduled medical exam, they would be whisked away to the underground kingdom or inside a mountain or something like that.
Absolutely.
So it's a good point. It's a very, very fascinating connections there.
I say I come across a few first-hand reports of those kind of experiences of being taken into some underworld and strange caverns that were appearing underneath sort of parts of the UK that just couldn't be such places, and yet these people were describing in quite detailed what they were seeing. But again, we start to kind of mix in other experiences. I mentioned before, my profession means I've worked with people who've had things like what we call the old hag experience, or hypnagogic dreaming and sleep paralysis, and what they describe certainly fits in with the classic hard alien abduction probe, what. It fits into their experiences because it's how the mind works. When we're experiencing these sleep paralysis and you feel trapped, you start to panic and you see all sorts of strange things. But I've worked with people who have no interest in ghosts or UFOs or anything, who've had this experience, and what they describe is as it happens, how they're feeling it. But even some of them have said that they don't believe in ghosts or UFOs or anything, but they've had this feeling of strange presences in the room when they're having these experiences. It seems to be something about how our minds perceive the things around us. And so if you're in a kind of strange altered state because you're having an odd experience, you see things more, almost like they're more real, as if they're actually there in front of you. And maybe that's the kind of thing these people are experiencing.
It's a bit like pareidolia, isn't it? Really?
Well, in some sense, your brain's trying to make sense of what it's experiencing and can come up with completely wrong answer because, as you guys know, our minds are kind of almost programmed, if you like, to see faces in random shapes that just aren't there, but you can convince yourself you're seeing a face. Similarly, because you're having an experience where you can't move and it feels like your body's become strangely heavy, the idea that you then think, well, something's sitting on me and attacking me, it kind of makes sense because that's what you're experiencing. But it's your mind trying to interpret anomalous inputs you're experiencing.
John Keel had a list of questions. He found that people that would have encounters, he discovered this back in the late 60s when he was investigating the Mothman stuff, that he would ask a lot of questions. He found that people would experience strange electronic phenomena in their house, poltergeist phenomena, and sometimes they were also prone to maybe have seen some kind of a strange creature. So it was... he wouldn't just ask about the contact. There was all kinds of other things going on. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who you may be familiar with, great researcher in the U.S., she was doing investigations into shadow people and people having those experiences. She found out that a significant percentage of those people were also experiencing classic alien, so-called alien abduction phenomena. And I found the same thing with a lady out in New Hampshire. And
we've talked about this often, people that experience hauntings and things like that. If you really go into it, there's UFO connections to that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And the lady in New Hampshire?
Well, I came armed with, if I had asked her, if I had interviewed her back in the 60s, back when I, thought we were just dealing with aliens from Alpha Centauri or whatever, I wouldn't have known all these questions to ask her. But she and her husband were standing out on the porch. They saw strange lights coming over. And all of a sudden, they're missing a half hour of time, and they're not standing next to each other on the porch. They see one of these large, giant black triangles come over so low it's touching the tops of the trees. And then she's not able to be regressed right away. They can't get through. But I started asking her questions. She had experienced shadow people. Both her sons were experiencing strange orb phenomena in and out of the house. And then I asked her, I said, look, I know this is going to be a strange question, but have you ever seen anything like a Bigfoot or some kind of a undocumented creature? And she said, well, no. And then she said, oh, wait a minute. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law in that same general area, they saw what looked like a panther standing on two legs, standing by a tree. And when it saw them, it took off. So I would have never, very credible lady, and I would have never known to ask these kind of questions if others hadn't laid the groundwork like John Keel.
That's it. That's the kind of experiences. It brings us back to Rendlesham Forest. I was saying earlier that there's a history of strange phenomena in that wood, including things like that. Strange creatures being seen walking around the wood. Two-dimensional forms.
There's orb phenomena as well, isn't there?
Yeah, two-dimensional forms. The figures walking sideways, side on, perfectly fine, turn 90 degrees, and they are gone. They're like silhouettes, turn back again, and they're straight. Almost like a two-dimensional piece of cardboard being manoeuvred around is one of the things this guy described. Someone saw crossing a road. It's like, what the hell is that?
Now that is fascinating. Are there any books or studies done on that particular aspect of Rendlesham? Because I'd love to go into that.
Well, as I say, this guy that I say he asked not to sort of name publicly, as far as I understand, he is working on a book, and that's part of the reason why he's keeping his
excellent. Something to watch for.
The phenomena he described was amazing. That he's collated from people's experiences. Say he's a local and he visits the woods regularly, and almost like the UFO as well. It's kind of that's part of the strange phenomena of this wood. It's not isolated. It's not on its own. It's just one of the strange phenomena that occurs here. But
does that lend us to think that maybe, I've been kind of influenced by Joe McMoneagle's remote viewing, that it might be something terrestrial, but with all this other weird stuff going on, it kind of leads one to believe it's just part of the morass of paranormal activity, that perhaps it isn't, something conventional at all.
Well, it could be that it's still earthbound. It's from, if you like, alternate realities that are around.
Oh, sure.
Rather than from sort of alien outer space. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big believer in nuts and bolts UFOs from other planets. I do think these phenomena are earthbound, but there are other reality bound, if you like. People sometimes see that as being a more of an extreme view, and I think, well, why? It's just because we accept the idea that we've got spaceships from other planets coming to us. But you think it breaks the fundamental laws of physics to begin with. So there's no reason that these things could be alternate realities crossing over. Is it any more strange than an alien spaceship? Again, because these things have been reported for centuries, but not alien spaceships. Strange phenomena reported for centuries.
We're very much on the same page on that. That's kind of my. Although some of it is very physical, and there are some. We probably are also dealing with some kind of very physical alien entities in some cases. There are some cases that are just mind-boggling that don't seem to necessarily be phantasms or something that we are projecting.
No, I can fully accept that as well. These things have found a method occasionally, either deliberately or accidentally, crossing over. No doubt about that. And again, we've talked a bit about time changes as well. Those kind of experiences where you're seeing things of the past or potentially of the future, if you like, if it's somebody else who's seeing it. I think there's a real validity to those as well. I'm just very, very briefly want to tell you a quick story, which I mentioned last time, but absolutely fascinates me. A friend of mine is a researcher who was working in a library in London. He'd been there sort of into the early evening, working on the book he was working on at the time, and he said he was sitting at his desk in the library. There's no one else around the immediate vicinity. All of a sudden, a man in very quite old-fashioned, almost like Victorian-style clothing, just came around the corner, looked at my friend in complete shock, and my friend looked at him in complete shock, as if each one was really surprised to see the other person. He said he then walked past you, went past the bookcase, and disappeared. And he said this guy was as real as anything. He was there in front of me, solid, and he saw me and I saw him. We were both surprised at how each one of us looked, because he's got quite long hair, and he's a bloke with a beard, long hair, would look very strange to this guy. And he said the guy was in that Victorian-style clothing. And he could clearly see me, and I could clearly see him. Almost some kind of time slip going on there. So those kind of phenomena, I think it's possible that sometimes these sort of what we might think as being alien spacecraft may well be from our own future, and they've sort of slipped back either intentionally or unintentionally.
And as Juan mentioned, there's a lot of theories about the makeup of the ground, quartz and granite and so forth. And there may be all kinds of factors that we just don't see and that are triggering or helping to create the atmosphere where these things can occur.
Certainly, absolutely.
I had an experience that you were just talking about, Andy, where someone suddenly appears and then they disappear completely. It's at the Grog, the local restaurant. The guy came over and took our order, remember? And then we never saw him again. Remember that night?
That happens more than you think.
Especially down there.
Oh dear. Well, I've had experiences like that as well, where I've actually seen something or bumped into something that has been as shocked as I have to see it, It's happened quite a lot. But I've mentioned it so many times on this show, I'm not going to go and bore everybody again by mentioning it.
Well, Mac, you've wanted to see something, right? You wanted to be out there in the middle of the night, searching the heavens, and then you don't see anything.
Where are you going with this? Okay. Yeah, I'm someone who I've never seen anything. I'm always looking for something, and that's why I'm convinced nothing will ever happen to me. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like people who go and who are looking for it, it doesn't seem like they ever see it. But, when strange things happen to people, I think that more times than not, it's kind of like a surprise. It comes out of the blue, and it happens to people that...
Oh, yeah.
You have no interest in it, I mean, I'll just say real quick that it's the story of my wife before we got married. She is someone, she barely knew what UFOs were, just didn't interest her at all. She was driving on the New York Thruway one night, and this thing came right over a car, very, very bright light, and she pulled over, and it stopped. It's the same old story you hear. I'm driving, it follows me. I pull over, it pulls over, it stops. I drive again, it follows me. And, all the things, she kind of hit a lot of the points that, you hear in, like, let's say, the typical UFO sighting. And there's no way in the world that she looks for them now. But, before, it didn't even cross her radar.
Yeah.
That's often the thing, though, isn't it? It's the people who don't really have an interest, the ones that often have the more unusual experiences, and those who might spend years investigating don't see a damn thing. I mean, fortunately...
Well, it's like Mark. Mark has never seen anything.
Yeah. You'd never believe that.
Except for the no, tell a lie. For the first time last year, he was driving... Shut up! Alexa, stop!
Unplug it. It's
that happens. Sorry.
Until you can say, Alexa, go give me a turkey sub and a six-pack. It doesn't work.
We're almost there.
Yeah, what I was saying, Mark last year was driving along in New Jersey with his wife, and for the first time he saw a string of lights going across the sky.
Strange.
And he wasn't the only one. Apparently there were other people in New Jersey that actually saw it. But all his life, he'd wanted to see a ghost, he wanted to see a UFO, never saw nothing.
Never saw nothing. Same with me. I'm always looking, but just never see it. And the closest I came was we were down the beach once. We lived near the beach, and we're on the beach, and we're watching, there was unusually high waves. Okay, we're actually down the reservation for you guys, locals.
I know exactly where that is.
And we're out on this kind of platform where you can kind of look out over the marshes, towards Ipswich, towards, Big Neck and Little Neck. So where it's dusk and it's fall, and so it's dark and it's getting dark, let's say, and we can see two sets of very strange lights coming right at us, blinking multicolored lights separated by about 20, maybe about 50 feet, okay? And here they come, and they're right over the marsh. They're not 50 feet above the marsh. And we could see them for a long time. They're coming right at us, and I said to Lois Lane, I said, this is it. We're going to see it. And there were two medevac helicopters went right over our heads. And
flying in perfect formation.
Right, yeah, and they're going to the hospital in town, right? Now, here's the strange thing is, if they hadn't gone right over us, or if, we just saw them up in the mark, I would bet, I'd give you $1,000 and say, this is a UFO. What else could it be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
but then you hear them coming at, within a certain range.
Right, yeah. If you were out of the sound range and it's just that flat, open, miles and miles of marsh,
right,
and you saw it, you say, what could that possibly be? And, well, it's a medevac helicopter. You're just not close enough to, realize.
And you go, damn.
Right. Oh man, I was pissed. I don't want to use a British word, but I was pissed.
No, we understand that word. Just use it.
It's that scene.
I thought it was finally.
You weren't sodded. You were pissed.
No, right. I was on my way to sodded, but. A great title for a book. I'm not boring.
Well, you know where I live here in the Gwendareth Valleys? You can't say that when you're drunk, I tell you. Gwendareth Valley, right? It's UFO highway. In fact, you see so much up there in the sky on a good night, on a nice clear night. We take no notice anymore.
Right. It's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And once again,
just take no notice. You see it go by. Oh, there's a UFO just flown over.
Right. If you really take a look, and it's kind of funny because we had a blackout down where we live, and it was during one of the World Series games, as it turns out, in 2013, of all the times there an electrical blackout. But anyway, we went out on our porch, and there's no lights on. And you can see so many, obviously, airplanes flying. It's amazing how many airplanes are flying at night. I asked Coco once, Cobra, and I said, do more planes fly at night? He says more cargo planes and stuff like that fly at night, and there's a good chance you're going to see them. But they're all around you. And so we're out on our porch, we're watching these things, and this is the closest I've ever come to seeing something, and I don't know what it was, but this light goes over us, okay, maybe a couple miles away. We see it go out over the ocean, and it did split into three. It just split into three separate lights, and there they go, So, but then someone says, well, there's always drones, and we have seen drones at night later on, We have definitely seen drones flying over the base in El Martinez, So, I got to say they were probably drones. But
we live near a lot of airports.
And there's a lot of airports, right? Yeah. We're right on the flight path for Logan Airport, and which is a big airport. So you're going to see lots of stuff. But, once again, there's a small airport near where we live, a very, very small airport. But so many strange things happen there. We've coined it the mystery airport, and I can see it from my porch. And, it'll be like 11 o'clock at night, and you'll see two helicopters come, fly over, land, stay there for 10 minutes, get up and fly, and then,
in this dinky little airport.
You can't get more dinky, once again, for a UK word.
Whereabouts is that?
This is in Plum Island, Massachusetts. It's about 40 miles north of Boston, right up the coast.
I remember doing an investigation on a remote view on a small private airfield out there because they've been seeing so much stuff going on.
Well, some odd things.
Obviously, it's not the same one. But yeah, there was a lot of odd stuff going on in that one, apparently. But here, I was out in the garden one summer, sitting out in the garden with my friend Pod and her son, and we were watching. There was a light just over top of the farmers' cow sheds, and this light was up in the sky, and it was just still. But going round it, like they was playing with it, it was three little lights darting about all over the place.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they just kind of blended into this big light, and the thing just shut off.
Right. You hear that a lot. I mean, you do hear that a lot. Of UFOs, releasing small.
I think we've got it. Actually, we filmed it.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, it was on an old. Christ! And it couldn't have been a drone. It couldn't be drones or anything. It was on an old Sony cyber, whatever camera.
Sure.
Telephone camera.
Stone Age video.
Yeah, that's how long ago it was.
Can I ask you guys a question? I know we only have a few minutes left, and can I just ask you a question off the
about 20 minutes, darling.
Well, yeah.
All right. Is that metric or?
Wow.
What can you just in a thumbnail, can you explain what do British people think of Americans? Not us in particular, but just Americans. What do you think of us?
With what?
Wow,
With respect,
okay, and there's your answer.
with respect to paranormal studies or what?
We don't even have to get that in depth.
Wow, that's a pretty broad question.
Your laugh said it all, though, didn't it?
We love you. We love you.
After a hearty laugh, we love you. Have I heard that before?
We
Well,
love
put it
you.
this way, I'm on my.
We find you very naive at times, but we love you.
Naive.
Well, now the knives come out. Andy, what do you say? Do you love us as well?
I should be coming back to New York for the third time this year, and I was in Seattle last year, so I do like America. I like you guys. Sometimes you do drive me nuts. Some of the theories that you guys believe are quite frightening, but.
Like, what, how do we drive you nuts?
You drive on the wrong side of the road, for starters.
That's
Well,
number one.
that's fine. That's good. That's no problem at all.
Yeah,
Just some of the crazy
you don't
theories
pronounce
that
your
people
words
make.
properly, you know. Well, I've had all this with
You have
Mark. I've had all
strange
this with
spellings as
Mark.
well.
Yeah,
That's it. You know.
Use funny words too.
yeah. You use funny
I
words.
love it. Football. He was
We love the Americans. We do love the Americans, and America is an absolutely beautiful country. I know because I've seen it.
Still no hard feelings from the
Not
revolution.
going to say how I saw it. I saw it on a webcam. Huh?
You don't hold a grudge for the revolution?
Because, you know, let's face it. We had ships, you had canoes.
Okay.
We traveled 5,000 miles, is it, to get to you?
Yep.
You didn't have to travel anywhere.
Have you ever been over here, Irene?
No, but,
No.
well, but, not saying.
Sound like a thought.
You got to come over here, and then we'll set you up in a B&B right here on.
B&B?
That's very inside, Juan. It's extremely inside.
Nice to a hotel for me, sweetie.
Well, that's a good B&B.
Well, I have to ask you guys the same question then. What do you make of us lot?
I love the British. I mean, and I'll tell you why. Because
I watch British television.
Juan, young with me, he's very much into British culture, and over here at PBS is
I watch the reruns of Victoria. I can't wait till the next season, next Sunday.
I'm not quite that into it, but I grew up as a kid, and I know it sounds strange, but I grew up as a kid with the Beatles, you know, and the Beatles are a huge part of my life, as it is. I know you two guys, you know, and that's why you cannot, you know, have any dislikes for the British, because they've given you, in my opinion, they've given you all this kind of joy. And not just the Beatles, but what happened because of them, you know. Because of them, you have the Rolling Stones, you have Queen, you have Eric Clapton, you have Queen, you know what I mean? You have all these bands that if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't be out there. And you have all these guys who, as kids, picked up guitars, and they're like rock gods, you know. They started all that. And it came from England. And the strange thing is that they're in love with American black music. And over here, we had segregated radio stations. And these guys loved it. And they kind of, you know, not homogenized it, but they distilled it, and then it came back to us. And that's a strange cultural thing, you know. The Romans, the first thing, when they came to the United States, they wanted to go down the Mississippi Delta, for crying out loud.
And they wanted to visit Chess Records.
And Muscle Shoals and stuff, you know, all these things that we kind of like take for granted. We don't even take for granted. We've heard of them, and it's like, what big deal. But they knew about these places. That's what's cool about that whole British invasion, you know, and our lives wouldn't be the same without it, you know, frankly. I don't like the food. The food is terrible, you know.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on, it is.
This is the best cuisine in the world.
Are you kidding?
Sausage and mash? Where else did you get sausage mashed?
No, name me one British restaurant ever.
McDonald's.
There you go. That's Scottish.
With us, if you talk about sort of eating out, we don't tend to have restaurants like that. We tend to have sort of the sort of pub restaurants, if you like. We have things like Harvester. We've got Beef Eater, but they're all just very standard, very boring fare. Quite
fish and chips.
Food, to be honest with you. Fish and chips, of course.
I like the food, but
English cuisine doesn't really exist, but we have, you know, nice English stuff.
Food, but the English cuisine is pushing it, definitely.
There's English food and, you know, Italian cuisine. There's no Irish.
I mean, Yorkshire pudding.
Oh, stop it, Irene. That's
Yorkshire pudding.
stuff.
But the point is, we don't eat out at places like that. We eat in Italian restaurants, Indian restaurants,
exactly.
Chinese restaurants.
Exactly.
You know, fish and chips down the road, get a pizza takeaway.
Yeah.
You know,
I think I've given my point.
Russian restaurants are good. I love Russia.
Well, back in 1973, I had a chance to spend a couple months in the British Isles. I had a lot of second cousins over there that really rolled out the red carpet for me, so it was a blast. I got to see Stonehenge and Loch Ness, and so I had plenty of time. And then I got back one more time in the Navy, but only for a few days, at Portsmouth. I was stationed on a submarine, and we pulled into Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. So, but also, British murder mysteries are the best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, right. And once again, and I'm going to let
You can't beat a Miss Marple, I tell you.
And Midsummer Murders.
I'll let these other guys talk, but I got to say, one of the best things I've seen, like on PBS, and really the only thing I want, is the Sherlock Holmes series. I mean, that's like close to being brilliant, what they have done with that series, you know?
Even modern version.
They only make 3 or 4 a year, which is a drag. And are they even doing it anymore? Juan, you know, you're the PBS expert.
I haven't seen any reports of any new Sherlock Holmes stuff
I think
that's
it's
coming up.
finished, actually, guys, yeah. The guys, the team who created it and moved on to do a new version of Dracula, which should be on, I think should be this year, but it's the same production team, if you like, have now moved on. They were the guys who were involved in, not the reboot of Doctor Who, but the next group, if you like, because there's Richard, I forget his name, Russell T Davies started Doctor Who back up again, and then he left, and Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss took over, and they're the ones who created the Sherlock Holmes, so they've now moved on to the Dracula project. So, yeah,
the guy who plays Sherlock's brother, you know, what's his name? Mycroft. Mm-hmm. That's the guy, that's one of the creators of it, you know?
Yes,
and just some of the stuff they put in it and just the way they kind of tie the threads together and stuff, I mean, it's way better than anything you'll see on American TV. You wouldn't be able to get that past an American TV network. You know, you just wouldn't.
But here's what's cool is that a lot of those masterpiece projects are co-produced by local PBS station WGBH. And then over the years, guys, my DNA got altered where I normally I'd be watching football. Instead, on Sunday night, I'm watching, let's see, Poldark.
Yeah. That was a long time ago, Poldark.
The Crown.
I'm not sure it's
The Crown, yeah, that's good.
I'm not sure it's DNA one.
Call the Midwife.
That's good as well. I was delivered by one of them.
By midwife, yeah.
Yeah.
What do they do? We don't even
one
have...
of these little country midwives who rode around on a bicycle back in the...
Babies instead of a doctor? Is that what it's for?
No, midwives.
Help you out with delivery.
Like a nurse?
They're like a nurse, but they specialise in pregnancies and things like that, delivering babies.
No, we don't have them over here.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. If you want to do natural childbirth like we did with our second daughter, you have a... You don't deliver in a hospital or something, or necessarily at home.
You have a specialist woman in attendance.
They call it a midwife.
Before the day, she's consulting you.
This was in the 80s. This was in the 80s, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like the thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've even got midwives over here now, but they mainly work in the hospitals, delivering babies actually in the hospitals. There's only times that doctors get involved in things like that is when there is a problem.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we could have done a home delivery, but my wife was a little antsy about that, but we didn't deliver. She didn't deliver in the hospital.
That is something to be antsy about, probably.
Well, because they wanted you to deliver.
How did we get from Rendlesham
15 minutes hospital?
Oh, I see.
And we're too far up the woods.
How did we get from Rendlesham Forest to pregnant women?
It's just being one that myself, actually.
Here we are.
That's how crazy this network is, isn't it?
What about Monty Python?
Funny.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. In its day, it was the best.
Yeah. It really is. And this stuff, once again, if you can remember back up to their skits, that's how good they are, And the movies they made were unbelievably funny. Life of Brian is one of the best movies ever made. You keep up with it. And if you know what they're getting at, It's hilarious, you know.
There was actually a scene in that where I was in the cinema with my wife, and I was laughing so hard I had to stand up and get in the aisle, and people were staring at me because I was going to hit the floor laughing.
Yeah, was it
because I was a distraction to the
was
movie.
it the biggest dickus?
It was actually when they were stoning the guy.
Oh man! Oh yeah, they stoned the guy.
It was men dressed as women, dressed as men, stoning a guy.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
oh, come on.
And they come up with the justification. Oh, we'll only throw one stone, and let's see what happens.
Or I'll buy some
right off the head.
stones. You know, I'm going to buy some stones and then give me a bag of gravel. Oh, come on.
I think there's nothing like British humour.
I used
really
to like bits about the guys being part of the Inquisition. No one expects the Inquisition.
Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give her the rep.
Yeah.
Pulls up this thing.
They're walking down the sidewalk, and his bodyguard's like pushing people out of the way. The bishop.
Then they had hell's.
I have lost total control of this show.
Yeah.
Sorry, people. We were talking
How
about
much we love
Rendlesham.
you, that's all. We're telling you how much
John
Americans
Cleese, Eric Idle, and who was the guy that was in Fish Called Wanda besides John Cleese?
That's
John Cleves.
Which he was.
Eric
The other guy, yeah.
Right, the world travelling stuff.
God.
The world. What's his name?
Yeah.
Michael Palin.
We love them. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Palin. Who's in it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, fantastically funny.
So, what would you say was the general impression in America of the Rendlesham incident? How would you summarise it? Bring it back.
what?
What was supposed to be? What would be the general impression of the Rendlesham Forest incident in America? You know, American ufologists. How do they see it?
I think people believe what they want to believe. You know, I think a lot of people. You know, it's just another one. It's like the British Roswell. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people are aware of it. There's been a lot of books written about it. There's been a lot of blah 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 about it. You know, but I think people
definitely is a lot of blah blah blah.
But I think people look at it as something weird happened, and you know, it's just another one of. But I think it's a good case once again because. You got an officer who shouldn't be out there. The debunker of the base is out there with a tape recorder, and you hear it's going on. How I mean, you can't get. It's very hard to get more authentic than that, other than having a video or something. You know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as murky as Roswell. Roswell, there are so many different theories. It's almost like getting into the Kennedy assassination, and how almost for a while every year you get another bizarre theory about what happened. Yeah. Well. The best one I like is Walter Bosley talked about how his father was in. Go ahead.
On Happy Days, isn't that guy?
No. His father was in special intelligence and claims that Roswell was a branch off of the human race that had remained hidden, and they crashed and they asked for help. Now that may not be true at all, but it's one of the best. I like that theory the best.
You know,
it's in all the smoke.
That equals blah 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 to me. You know?
It does. It is.
I mean, it's like, and once again, it's because people are publishing books and they get them published without them being vetted. Okay, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, but you know, the books I've done, every book I've ever done has been for a publisher in New York City, and they vet them to the point where you're like, oh, give me a freaking break.
You wrote one in a vet, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Thought so.
You've touched on a bit of a bugbear of mine, actually. A lot of this sort of self-publication stuff is a problem because, as you say, it's not proofread, it's not backed up with anything other than what the writer said. And yet they'll go and say, well, I've written a book. It's been published, by you. And he's sold 2.5 copies of it. But that's the thing, I think, things like Rendlesham and Roswell as well, definitely. It's almost like you have to write about these if you want to be a UFO researcher. The things you take your name on, you have to sort of have your theory, and often that's it, is people have to find new theories. Now, how many theories might already exist? You have to have a new angle if you're going to write a book on the topic. So I do think people do tend to add to the story and then change the story to suit their own ideas, which is a problem. If you want to try and drill down to the actual events of what's supposed to have actually happened, you can't anymore. You're drilling through sand now. It just fills in the gaps by itself, doesn't it?
Well, see, and that's the thing is that there are, and we talk about this on the show a lot, and Steve is an expert on it. There are so many cases from the 50s and the 60s, right, that are mind-blowing, okay? In people, researchers who are authentic researchers, and they're not going to go out there to blah, blah, blah. They're going to go in and look into these things. They should put half as much energy and effort into looking into them as they have with Roswell. Mm-hmm. You know, like talking about the other Roswell, which was, you know, ICBM base that was there in 1962 that was haunted, talking about the Aztec UFO crash, talking about what Steve was talking about, the swamp gas. I'm talking about Shag Harbor up in Canada, where they have like this.
Shag Harbor?
Yeah, up in Canada, where they can see a flying saucer down. They have it surrounded by ships, Canadian, American ships, and they can see it, and it disappears. You know, I mean, what's going on there?
Wow,
you know, so look into those things. You know, really do some really good research into stuff that is just like, you know, so way out there that it's impossible for it to be a hoax. Mm-hmm. And so far it's been, you know, kind of virgin territory for people going in there and kind of elaborating on it. Look into those things and enough with the Roswell, frankly. Okay.
Yeah.
How about that?
Roswell's stupid.
We're going to have to, you know, edit that
like
out
Disneyland.
and put a little music behind it.
Well, I think
Good idea.
To believe in paranormal and UFO activities, but I don't think we want to believe in aliens necessarily.
Right. People want to believe, you said it. You know, people
except
want
Keith
to,
Richards, he does. He's totally jiggy with it.
He believes in everything.
Well, I think he's well in with them, actually, to tell you the truth.
Ooh, wait, don't say anything about Keith. Was that a bad?
What?
Say that once more, please.
I think.
Put music on.
By the way, while I'm on here, where's Cobra?
See, why do people ask us that one? You know,
he's a celebrity.
Well, you know, you get excited about talking to Commander Cobra, and he doesn't turn up.
Well, see, that's the mystery about him, isn't it? You know, he's on a secret mission. That's all.
A secret mission, yeah. Well, you tell him I'll give him a secret mission the next time I will get my hands on him. I will have him on the show.
Holy cow. We will be a TV show for that. Believe me, we'll have cameras for that. He goes away for 3 or 4 weeks. He calls us when he's going, and he calls us when he's coming back. And that's
one time he called us in flight.
He called us in flight. Yeah, he did a show in an airplane once. So. Yeah.
Brilliant.
He's a lad, isn't he?
Oh, he flies over my house. It's funny because he will call me up. He lives in Maine, which is 2 states up from me. And he'll call me up, and he flies down to Cape Cod, and he'll say, I'll be going over your house in 20 minutes, okay? And Al Martini has been on the porch with me, you know, several times.
Waving.
And he's down at, 500 feet or whatever, and he circles the house with smoke coming out of the back of the airplane and making a lot of noise and whipping his wings. And as Juan will say, he'll drop a bag of white powder in my
flour.
His flour.
King Arthur flour.
Yep, see, another British thing. Nice how to tie the British into the
That's right.
And fly away. I mean, it's funny. He's crazy. He's a very straight up guy. He's a very straight individual, very ship-shaped, as they say in the Navy.
Ship-shape in Bristol fashion.
But I'll tell you, man, he's nuts.
Yeah.
And I say that in the nicest way.
He is squared away, that's for sure.
He's squared away.
Well, I am definitely going to get him on the show.
Okay.
If you're listening to this, Commander Cobra, I'm coming for you.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. I'm sure his ears are ringing.
I know he was prepped for tonight, but the last-minute thing came up.
Right, yeah. She's on call with, who knows who.
Yeah.
Also very suspicious.
He's the real deal. I mean, he did 5 tours in Iraq, flying over Iraq. He's done,
test piloting
thing. He test pilots a lot of helicopters and stuff. And he works for, some kind of quote-unquote contractor that I know had him flying over riots in Baltimore there a few years ago, listening in. So, he's into that kind of stuff.
Does he ever come over here?
He's probably over there right now.
He's at your door. He's the man outside your door.
I'm just looking out my French doors to my garden to see if he's kind of
standing there in an orange jumpsuit and a helmet. That's if you see anyone in an orange jumpsuit and the helmet, that's him. That's his pickup girls.
He's never without his helmet and face shield, and he looks like the Top Gun or something.
Top Gun, yeah.
He looks cooler than Tom Cruise.
Which looks funny when we walk into a bar with him, but the girls kind of get used to it in a way.
They gravitate toward him like a magnet.
Yeah,
and he's taller than Tom Cruise.
Okay,
I think everyone's taller than Tom Cruise.
We have a show over here, which you may have seen, called Top Gear. It's all about cars. Driver called Mystique. And he's always got his helmet on. You never see his face. So maybe it's him, really. That's what he does.
That's funny. Yeah, I know that guy ran into trouble, but I watch those old kind of reruns. So I watch more PBS than I apparently think I do,
I got a passport.
Yeah, he's
a passport?
Yeah, you got it.
I thought only 35% of Americans had passports.
No, I subscribe to it every year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A passport?
Do we know what we're talking about? What are you talking about?
The PBS passports.
I thought you meant a passport to travel.
Oh, no, I don't have that, yes.
How many tote bags do you have? I see hundreds. Hundreds.
I don't have one of those.
We also have BBC America.
BBC America is also really... Yeah, that's where I watch.
BBC America.
I do find American TV drives me absolutely mad, though, with the adverts. I mean, we get adverts in commercial TV here, but they're every 5 minutes in American TV programs. It's just...
Well, we have DVR. Do you have DVR technology over there where you just tape everything, you zip through the commercials?
Yeah. It's when I'm on holiday there in the States, obviously, I'm just stuck with whatever's on the screen, so...
It's like I haven't watched a commercial. I can't tell you the last time I watched a real commercial, especially during sports games. Just start them a little half hour later, zip right through the commercial. But because they put on so many commercials and football commercials are like they're really 5 or 6 minutes long. And say, what are they doing in all this time? Well, having a coffee break or a tea break or something.
We say over here that the American football is designed for TV. It's designed for advert breaks because obviously British football, soccer, as you call it, you can't do that. You have to wait for half time. But with American football, you get a break of 15 minutes, don't you?
Going and going. I mean, I hate to say it at the end of the show, but come on, soccer is boring, man. You can't.
What about air rugby then? Hang on a minute. Your American football is a padded up version, helmeted version of air rugby, where air boys go out there in just a little t-shirt and a pair of shorts.
There's two big things. Okay, first, American football, you can pick up the ball and run with it. Okay, and number two,
you can with rugby.
You get 12. You get.
It's an Americanized game of rugby. That's all it is. Except you lot are frightened of getting hurt. Air boys, they go out there and they just bloody knock through everything. Okay. They're all just muscle. Yours is all padding.
I can tell you, I have a back injury sustained playing rugby in my 20s.
I love rugby.
I'm in pain.
That's good. All right, I could see that, but I wouldn't say I had a back injury in soccer. It just doesn't sound as manly. You know what I mean?
That's the
They pick the ball up in the air, they flip over, and if they don't land right on their feet, they're on their back, aren't they?
Look at the size of the net. I could kick it in that from come on. I mean, it's stupid.
Well, in rugby, it's a bar, isn't it? And it's just a bar they kick it over.
If only our hockey nets were that big.
Rugby, you watch rugby, British rugby, right? And American soccer. They're very, very similar. Very similar.
They are similar. There's no doubt about it. Yep.
Except, their boys go for about 40 minutes before they even get a break. Yours are going for 5 minutes and they get a break.
They have to sit down for 5 minutes, don't they?
What's the sensible thing?
Sit down every 5 minutes,
Sorry, guys, I've got to stop us here. Why is this suddenly turned into sports program? We've got enough programs here.
Hang on, Andy. Hang on. We're getting back to Rendlesham, everybody. I say the word Rendlesham. Now we're going to have to close the show.
Oh.
Am I correct, Andy? We're running out of time.
We're at 2 hours.
And anybody that wants to hear these bubbly boys from America, I repeat it, they can listen to them on the Paranormal UK Radio Network on the Mark Maloney Military X-Files. Okay. Capito?
I don't think we've never been called bubbly before, but we're
No, you're very bubbly, very bubbly.
effervescent is the American word.
That's the word. That's the English word too. She said a few bubblies herself, I think, at the moment.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, kids. We've had a lot of fun talking to you.
It really has been a good time.
Pleasure to meet you.
We've wandered topics a little bit, but that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Irene, why don't you book some passage on, some cheap airline? Come on over here.
Yeah.
We'll introduce you to Cobra.
BOAC, are they still in operation?
No, you introduced me to Cobra, but is he going to keep his helmet on?
Oh, whoa, we're going to have to cut that out.
This is the point. It's all about the helmet, isn't it? Has he got those little stickers on his helmet, that you can buy in comics and everything? Kids buy and they stick all over the place?
You're going to have to talk to him about his helmet. I mean, that's all I can tell you.
I think we really should leave it there.
Wear an STP sticker because it keeps things more lubricated.
Oh, wow. See,
Okay, let's close up this show. Let's close up this show. Don't go away, boys, all right? Just stay there for a little while.
Thanks a lot.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
We should
Cheers.
Okay, everybody.
Friends across the puddle.
I apologize. Yes, don't go away, boys. So you can catch us again next week on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And until then, you can hear us just about everywhere in the world and on every platform. We're on iTunes. We're on TuneIn. We're in TalkStream. We are literally everywhere. And like I said, the Mark Maloney Military X-Files on Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Be there or be square.
Let's just say, everyone, let's say goodbye.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Having a song.
Cheers.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, bye.